Welcome back. Earn Your Leisure Podcast, episode 9. Before we start anything, we just want to thank you guys again for rocking with us throughout this journey. We want to remind you guys to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Earn Your Leisure. Yep. Make sure you turn on our notifications. Also, our website is up, earnyourleisure.com. We had some difficulties with it early on, but that's up and running. So we have all of the info for the podcast listings. We have our YouTube on there. We also have our merch shop up. The merch is dope. We have a bunch of dope shirts, and it's going to be even more stuff that we're going to roll out. But make sure you check the merch out. And also our Patreon is up as well. That is also on the website. And that's a way for just extra support. And if you want an extended dialogue, and, just kind of follow the journey a little bit more, it's all laid out. So that's on there as well. Feel free to support. So, yes. We are jumping right into it with the marijuana business. Yeah.
So back home smoking legal. All right. So that was a line that Drake said in Meek Mill's song. And it's important that people take note of what we're about to say, because we're not saying we're for or against. We're just going to give them some facts.
Yeah, no, it's not a stance.
Yeah.
It's not a stance. Look, me personally, I don't smoke. I never smoked. I don't have anything against anybody that smokes.
Right.
Everybody's personal preference. But we're not saying that it should be legal, that it shouldn't be legal. We're just laying out the facts, giving you dialogue, and just something to think about.
And we're going to look at it from the business perspective, because it is a multi-billion-dollar business. And I'm not sure if people really understand the potential growth that the marijuana business has. But we're going to break it down and talk about some people who have invested in the business and are seeing some benefits already. So let's just start from a legality standpoint.
Well, let's start even before we go there. I want to give a quick story that we put on our Instagram page.
Okay.
Of Al Harrington.
Shout out to him.
Shout out to Al Harrington.
Yeah.
So anybody not familiar with Al Harrington was an NBA player for I think like 10 years, something like that.
Yeah, he had an extended career.
Yeah, he was in the league for a while.
Yeah.
And he, towards the end of his career, he started getting a lot of injuries. Mm-hmm. Right. So how he was able to cope with the injuries is that he started to smoke.
So he had a couple of knee surgeries, and one of the knee surgeries, actually the effect of it, he had a staph infection, and he was prescribed all types of medicines, and they really weren't working for him. And he figured out, hey, I'm in a state, and 2011, 2012 season, I think he gets hurt, and he said he's in a state where marijuana is now legal for medical use.
What state was that?
Colorado. So he's playing for the Nuggets, Denver Nuggets at the time. And he's in Colorado. In 2012, they passed medical marijuana to be used, medicinal marijuana. And he decides, I'm going to try this. Now, he never smoked, too. He had your stance. He had never smoked, and he stands by that throughout high school and college, and even professionally, he never smoked. But decided, after reading up on it, I'm going to give it a try. And he sees the benefits of it right away.
Yeah. So, and then also what he does is that, the NBA has strict guidelines as far as drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Weed is still considered a drug, right, in most states.
And it's still illegal federally.
Federally, yes.
Yeah.
So he invests $5 million into a marijuana company because he sees the business side of it once he starts to see the medical benefits of it. But he doesn't want to put his name on it.
Yeah.
So he does it through his cousin's name.
Right.
Right, into a company named Viola.
Viola Extracts.
So now the company is in 4 different states. It employs 70 employees, and he's looking to have a future $1 billion valuation once and if it goes legal on a national level. So now he's like a spokesperson because he's not in the league anymore, so
right.
He doesn't have to worry about backlash. And it's actually ironic because I just saw an All-Star Weekend where the NBA invited him to come in and speak to the players,
future business
stuff like that.
Yep.
So they're actually embracing him as a marijuana ambassador.
Yeah, he had a big cosign. David Stern, who was the former NBA commissioner, said, "You know what? I didn't believe in that stance that players should be able to use it. But now listening to Al Harrington after he met with him a few times, he's like, you know what, Al? If it's going to keep players on the court and not sit out games and rest, I'm all for it." Now, he's not the commissioner anymore. Adam Silver is, but that's a big cosign. That's he's a former commissioner of a major sports league in America. So that's a huge cosign.
No, it is. And the thing about it also, so now we have to talk about some legalities of it, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different complexities in the marijuana industry, marijuana business, right? So one of the main issues is that some states it's legal, but it's still not legal on a federal level.
Right. So 33 states allow medical marijuana.
Right.
We live in New York. New York is one of those states. But then there are 10 states who have legalized recreational, which means you're allowed to carry it believe up to 1 ounce if it's something you carry, and if it's like a concentrate, which means it's in an edible product, I think it's maybe 1/8 of an ounce. So the 10 states, and you said that Al Harrington has 70 employees. Obviously, his employees are from 4 of those states: California, Oregon, Washington, Michigan, Vermont, Maine,
Nevada,
Alaska,
New Hampshire, I think.
Maybe not yet. New Mexico is like going to be the next one. So there's 10, and obviously Washington D.C. We say states, but the District of Columbia also has medical and recreational.
Yeah, so it's interesting because before, like a couple years ago, one of the biggest businesses in Colorado, when Colorado first legalized marijuana, one of the biggest businesses was security. So they had all these Navy SEALs and ex-Marines and things of that nature that were like carrying M16s and machine guns, and they would arm security for the dispensaries because the dispensaries was a cash business. They couldn't accept credit cards, and they couldn't put their money in banks.
Right.
So they literally had warehouses full of cash, right? And obviously you have warehouses full of cash, you're a target. That's dangerous. So being that the security business in Colorado like skyrocketed overnight because they couldn't. So now what was happening is that at that point in time, no bank in the country wanted to even run the risk of handling finances for a marijuana company because it's illegal on a federal level, and you can get arrested.
Yeah, so there were some stories where you had shops that would open, dispensaries that would open up, right? On a state level, it was legal, but if the federal government came in, they could shut you down, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a risk.
Yeah. So, but now there's actually 411 banks and credit unions that are currently doing business with marijuana companies, and they're looking to expand. So there's actually a bill in Congress now from 2 Democratic House members that wants to give safe haven to any bank or any credit union to do business with a marijuana company.
Yeah, so this is like a little fun fact. So Colorado has more dispensaries than they have Starbucks and McDonald's combined. And when we think of like franchises, like obviously we said on a few episodes ago that McDonald's was the largest franchise in the world. It is. They have more marijuana dispensaries than those 2 franchises combined. So this is like a $1 billion business that's happening.
No, I mean, it's like prohibition.
Right.
Like a lot of people don't really fully understand that alcohol was illegal at one point.
Yeah, 80 years ago is when they started making marijuana illegal. And that goes into a deeper discussion, right? When we look, and there's a documentary, it's called The House I Live In, and it talks about population control, right? So if people are doing things that are taken away from jobs from the people, the dominant population, how do you stop it? You start criminalizing the things they do. So if marijuana was something that was being used and grown, let's criminalize that. If it was in the West Coast, right, and it was opium that was being used, let's criminalize that. So we've seen that there's a deeper history when it comes to prohibition.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, even with this whole, so you know what POW stands for?
Prisoner of war.
Prisoner of war, right? So it's like, okay, so now it's looking like the tide is turning on this, and marijuana is going to be made legal. It's just a matter of time.
Just a matter of time.
So there's the war on drugs, right?
Quote unquote.
So how many people are serving jail time for marijuana?
Yeah, like that. Shout out to Biggs, right? So that was one of those dope quotes that I think flew over people's heads. Like Biggs, Burke, who was one of the co-founders of Rockefeller, was locked up for 5 years for marijuana charges, right? So, and he said that, I think Jay said that on the song. He was like, shout out to Biggs, he's back in the church. When I heard you got locked, that hurt. Took a good dude, locked him over some dirt. Like, yeah, it's legal in Colorado. So it's like, it's crazy, right? This dude did time, was away from his family, and how many other people are just like that doing more severe sentences for marijuana, and now in maybe 5 to 10 years, this is going to be something that's legally nationally.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things about it, I've heard that if you have a criminal record in drugs, you're not allowed to get a license to open up a dispensary.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So the blueprint has been laid, because when we think of United States of America, right, and we think North America, there's obviously 2 other countries. Canada has made marijuana legally throughout the entire nation, right? So their country is completely federally funded. You can sell and use marijuana in Canada, which is why we started with the back home smoking legal. Obviously, Drake is from Toronto. So when he says that line, that's real. Like, the country of Canada marijuana is legal.
Yeah. That's like we went to Montreal.
Yeah.
Somebody was smoking weed. That's before this whole thing started to turn. And I thought about the Nas song. Remember, he was like, imagine smoking weed in the street without cops harassing.
That day is upon us.
That's a fact.
That day is upon us, man. So we said it's $1 billion business. Here's some numbers behind it. In 2017, the marijuana legalization of it has grossed 9.7 billion in North America. Right? They expect it to have a 28% increase over the next 4 years, which would mean by 2021 it should be a $25 billion business. $25 billion just by legalizing something that a lot of people use in all aspects of life. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, pick a profession. A lot of people use the drug, and there's benefits of it. So when we spoke about Al Harrington, one of the things he said is that it's better than the prescription drugs that they do because, number one, it's natural. And for him, it was a pain relief, and not just smoking marijuana, but I think he was using marijuana cream. I think he had a cream that had marijuana, and he was using that for his ailments. And he had another person who said it was Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, man. He was like, I had back surgery in my career, and rather than taking pills, I was using marijuana.
Well, medicine's a drug.
Right.
So prescription, we see that now, right? Opioid addiction. So if you get prescribed Valium or any other type of drug, that probably has worse effects than marijuana.
Yeah. But as we see, it was criminalized. And recently, this week, we had David Irving. You see David, Cowboys player?
No.
He said he's retired. He's quitting. So he got suspended indefinitely from the NFL. The NFL's rules on obviously the drug policy are very strict. But he said he's quitting the NFL. He's gonna just smoke weed. And it was like a huge thing, and everybody was like, wait, what? This doesn't even make any sense. And his thing was like, yo, his stance is like, I'm using it for medical reasons. Why am I being suspended for it? So like now he's 25 years old.
You know the NFL, are they the only league that tests for marijuana?
No, all leagues do, but the leniency is different. So the NFL, and that was one of the things that people are arguing, like, why is this still a policy? Right? If people are using it to heal from injury and
it's not performance enhancing drug.
Right. So the argument is like, and I heard Stephen A. say this, he doesn't want to see the people that he's paying to come see inebriated. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but do you stop them from drinking alcohol the night before the game? Right? Obviously, alcohol is illegal, but it's still a drug. Right? Do you stop them from smoking cigarettes an hour before the game? It's a long list of things that we can go into.
Yeah.
And it's a topic for
I
debate.
personally think that once you see laws being passed or proposed to make it federally legal for banks to harbor money. Mm-hmm. So once the money comes into the banks, everything follows the money, right? So once the money comes into the banks and that's legal, then it's just a domino effect from there. So a lot of people are interested in marijuana. I always tell people all the time, do your research and understand what you're investing in, because there are a lot of companies and all companies aren't the same. Yeah. But that's interesting from a political standpoint because, like I said, the money always precedes the law. So once the bank, if that bill actually does pass, it's just a matter of time because there's too much money. It's billions, $trillion out there, and there's too much money for it not to be capitalized on, for banks not to take advantage of it, for institutions not to take advantage of it, for everybody not to take advantage of it. So, whether you're pro or for, it probably will happen. Yeah. So
like it or not,
it is what it is.
Yeah, and Snoop Dogg, probably the weed connoisseur, right? He had a venture capital firm that raised $45 million in 3 years, right? So people are investing in it at an all-time rate. Wiz Khalifa is another guy who's made a career off the use of marijuana. Same thing. And Mike Tyson, we just, we put the post up about that.
Mike Tyson is opening a 40-acre ranch in California.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, marijuana, interesting. It's only going to, get more headlines, I think, as time goes. And we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and just the last thing is that, yes, it's legal in those states, but you have to be 21. So that was how do we stop kids from using it? So 21 is the age that you have to be in order to use recreational or medical marijuana.
Yes, smoke responsibly, people. All right, now we're going to go into real estate. Right, real estate is vast, so we're going to chop real estate up into different segments for different shows. But today we're going to talk about appraisals, right? Home appraisals, and we're going to attack it from a different standpoint. So I actually wrote a post about this on my Instagram page a while back, if anybody follows me. So there was a recent study by the Bookings Institute and Gallup which shows that homes in majority black neighborhoods are undervalued during the appraisal process by $48,000 per home, which amounts to $156 billion in cumulative losses nationwide. So what happens is that they're saying that black homes are valued at 23% lower than the white counterparts. So obviously how they do that is that they base it like the same home, right? So it has to be like 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a black neighborhood,
Comparables.
3-bedroom. Yeah, exactly. Comparable. What we call in the real estate industry comparables, right? So they're not going to compare a 1-bedroom apartment to a mansion.
Right.
They compare the same exact home, same exact space, backyard, all of that stuff.
Yeah, within the same zip code, most times.
Right. So on average, the black home is valued at $48,000 less than the white home. So what happens is that now it affects people in a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah.
So now when you have less value when you sell your home, right? You're getting less money, all right? It lowers your net worth, right?
Yep.
It lowers your equity that you can borrow from because the value of the home is less. So it's a lot of negative effects for that, right? So some people will say, okay, well, the reason that the black homes and the black neighborhoods are lower than white neighborhoods is because black neighborhoods, unfortunately, a lot of times you have higher crime rates. It sometimes maybe a longer commute, bad schools. So all of that stuff plays a factor in the home value, right? And that's true. But studies showed that only accounts for actually half of the devaluation.
Yep.
So what happened to the other 78 billion, right? So that only accounted for 178 billion, but the other 78 billion is not accounted for in all those other factors. So this is what the study showed, not me. So the Booking Institute and the Gallup, they came to the conclusion that the other $78 billion in devaluation was solely due to one thing. You know what that one thing is?
Go ahead, man. Tell me.
Racism, right? They just said that they just valued black homes lower, right? When an appraiser comes, he just looks at a black home as being worth less than a white home. It's just, that's what it is. That's what it accounted for, right? So this is a troubling statistic, right? For a lot of different reasons. But the main reason is that, one of the things that, you always taught in America is that you do good, you buy a home, that's like the number one way to preserve wealth for your family, do the right things, and you can sell your home. But now, it's already discriminatory practices in actually buying a home, right? That's been proven. Yeah. And now, even if you do buy the home, it's devalued just because you live in it.
Yeah.
Right? So it was interesting when I wrote that story because a lot of people were going back and forth like, well, I don't believe that. It's like, a lot of people don't believe that racism is actually real.
It's a real thing.
But the thing about it is that it doesn't even affect people just in black neighborhoods. It can affect a black family living in a white neighborhood. Right?
You don't say.
So as I said, a lot of times people were saying like, this is just made up. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
So now, being that we have a personal story to confirm it, you're going to go into your story.
Yeah, you know what? When you wrote the article, and I had no idea you were writing the article, I thought you were writing it about me. I honestly was like, yo, this guy just wrote my story. And I called you. I'm like, yo, you serious? And you're like, nah, this is like factual news. This is the evidence. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is really happening. So 2 years ago, almost about 2 years ago, I was in the process of buying a home, and that let's go back. I wasn't going to be in the process if it wasn't for you, and that was part of the Earn Your Leisure conversation. My family was about to move, and you were like, "Hey, why don't you go in and buy the home?" And I was like, I had not given any thought. I'm like, you know what? Maybe Rashad, maybe I should do this. So you sparked that in my mind. I'm like, all right, well, I presented the proposal to my family, and they were like, let's do this. And one of the things we had to do was get the house appraised. Now, my family bought the home in 2010, and the house was valued at $575,000. That's what it was valued at. We bought it for $525,000. That was the purchase price in 2010. Long story short, part of my family wanted to move to another area, so I came in and went in on a deal with my father, and we got the house. And the process of appraisal was an alarming one, because when the appraisal, I won't say his name, we're actually still under we wrote a Consumer Reports review about it. The appraisal man came in and said that the house had devalued. Now, we have added things to the home, the typical things, obviously stainless steel furniture, stainless steel appliances, wood floors, all the things that you would add to, increase value in your home. And in the 8-year period, the house went from being purchased at $525,000 to now being $510,000.
So, all right. So you bought a house in New York.
In New York.
In the suburbs of New York, Westchester, which is anybody's not familiar. It's an pretty affluent neighborhood.
White Plains, New York.
Okay.
To be exact.
So you buy a house for 500 and how much?
$525,000.
525,000. 2010.
Yeah.
7 years where there's no market correction. Real estate has only gone up
Right.
in New York and across America as a whole, but definitely in
And
New York.
especially in this neighborhood.
Okay. You made improvements to the home. Mm-hmm. And he said that the home was devalued by 15,000?
15,000, yeah. So like when you look at that, it's like, oh wait, that's kind of crazy. But then you look at the comparables because that's part of the appraisal process too. So I looked at the comparables: 600, 650, 618. We had an offer on the table. Like my brother was going to sell the house before I stepped in, and the offer was for 600,000.
And you got appraised at 15.
510,000.
And what do your neighbors look like?
My neighbors are from a different ethnic background.
What ethnic background are they from?
We have Hispanic neighbors. We have white neighbors. We have a few black neighbors down the street.
The majority of people in your neighborhood, what are they?
Are white. Majority of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the comparables in the neighborhood is 600,000.
600 plus at least. So the deal was time sensitive. So not only did I was like blown away by the number that came back, I knew that we had to react fast because there was a lot of dominoes that were going to fall if we didn't get this done. So he came in and gave us a $510,000 appraisal. But on top of it, I had to pay him $800 to him to do that. So like not only was it injustice and a disservice, but I had to pay him out of my pocket to say thank you. He came in, he was here for maybe 10 minutes and left. And that was the last time I saw him until I had to, get in contact with him. Like, how did this happen? And, his explanation was pretty much you don't have the size of a backyard as the comparables. So I was like, no, this is impossible. I literally drove around the neighborhood to the comparables. I'm like, no, this is no way. And being that the process of getting the house was time sensitive, I just had to say, you know what? I'm just going to have to take this one, and then we'll deal with this at a later time. My mortgage broker at the time was like, I don't believe this. This is crazy. But at a certain extent, you're at the bank's mercy, right? Like, they're the one that's approving you for the loan. They send their appraisal, the person to do the appraisal. So it's like, what do you do?
So at that point in time, he took 90,000
Off the table.
of wealth
Right.
from your family.
Pretty much. Yeah.
With just his opinion.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, a lot of people don't get to this level to even see this type of discrimination, right? Because how many people are in the position to even get a home? You know what I mean? And it's like, I can tell this story, but it's like, who else can relate to this? Because like I said, when you wrote it, I was like, wait, you're writing my story. And you're like, no, this is happening everywhere. And I'm like, oh, now I have to take action. So I have taken some actions, and it's still.
You know what's crazy? Somebody said on my Instagram that she told the story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say it's true. So she said that she had a home appraised 3 times. Mm-hmm. And each time, let's say it was 300,000, roughly. I forget the number, but let's say 300,000. It was like solid 300,000 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
She had her white neighbor come for the 4th appraisal. She took down all the pictures, and the white neighbor answered the door. Long story short, the appraiser thought that it was the white neighbor's home. You know how much it was appraised for?
400.
Think like 410, like $110,000 more.
Just on an opinion.
Just because he saw a white person.
Yeah.
It happens. Look.
I lived it, and I'm still living it. It's like, wow. And I try to get that message out, like, yo, this is happening. But like I said, like, who can relate to it? Like, a lot of my peers are renting, and they're not in the process of owning a home yet, and they will be. But it's like, yo, this is how is this possible? So like, what would be the answer to eliminate that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do we have to get our own independent appraiser? Yeah, but that independent appraiser doesn't necessarily work for the bank who's giving you the loan. So it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, it was an interesting discussion on my Instagram page because then some appraisers came in. We was actually hoping to get somebody, an appraiser, to come in as a guest, but we wasn't able to. But yeah, I don't know. It's an unfortunate situation that just stuff like that people aren't really even thinking about, right? Like you hear about like the hardcore racism stuff, but little stuff like that. That's real wealth. So your situation was $90,000, right?
Right.
So now you can see how when you hear about 156 billion, like that's a large number, but how many people are like you? 90,000 here, 100,000 here,
right.
30,000.
It adds up.
It adds up.
Yeah.
It adds up.
Right. And like you said, like that's part of that generational wealth.
And that's not even a black neighborhood.
Right. Right. It just was that, hey, they saw the family that was here, and this is what we're saying it is, and take it or leave it. And if you leave it, then you're not going to get this loan because we're not approving you for this loan.
Yep. Well, yeah. The game is rigged. All right, boys and girls. So now is my favorite part of the show, story time.
All right. So this story actually starts as a lesson plan. And one of the things we do in the summer is teach financial literacy. And I was listening to Reasonable Doubt that President's Tools was on, and I heard the line, all Black Scott is sports and entertainment until we even, and it just stuck with me. And I was like, damn, is this true? Like, is Jay right? Like, is he right when he says that? Like, what does that even mean? And I started thinking about success and what images we think of when we think of success. And over I kept saying, wow, yeah, entertainment, damn, yep, sports. Okay. So when we sat down with our kids, I came up with this idea that, you know what, give them 8 pictures of celebrities. And lo and behold, they could name all 8. All 8. They were 8 for 8. And the celebrities, I believe, were Dr. Dre, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Floyd Mayweather was on there, Puff was on there. And it was like, all right, well, they know all of those. And then I gave them another sheet with 8 pictures, and I asked them to name them. And they got 1 out of the 8. And the one person was Oprah Winfrey. And I told them that the interesting thing is that you recognized every celebrity, but you only knew one of the wealthiest people of color in the world. And their minds were blown. And I was like, well, this is why, right? Because all we see is sports and entertainment. So we went to the number 1 person, the wealthiest black person or person of color in the entire world. Well, black person, not even person of color.
African descent.
African descent. And we came to the name Aliko Dangote. Aliko Dangote, he's actually from Nigeria. And his net worth this year, in 2018, was $10.7 billion. You want to go into it?
Yeah, so Aliko Dangote, we wanted to cover him for a few different reasons, but shout out to Africa. We have a lot of listeners in Africa and the UK and all over. And, obviously we live in America, so most of our stories are based off of Americans. Mm-hmm. But we're bigger than just America.
Right.
The world, as I always say, the world is flat. So we want to show love to every part of the world and to give inspiration to every part of the world as well, right? So as you said, the richest black person in the world, African descent, whatever you want to call it, is from Nigeria, mm-hmm. right? He's worth $10 billion. So we're going to tell his story. Because I'm pretty sure that most people aren't familiar with him.
Yeah, I mean, every time I've brought him up in conversation, people will say, who is that? And it's ironic. Like, we know who Floyd Mayweather is, and we know who Jay-Z, and congrats. I mean, they've had a huge amount of success. But those 3 people, their net worth doesn't even add up to his.
No, it's not even close. So, all right. So, Aliko, he comes from Nigeria, right? And he starts in 21 in the concrete business.
Yes.
So he comes from a wealthy family already.
Yeah.
Nowhere near where he is now.
Right.
But he comes from a wealthy family already.
So
and that's another thing, too, we have to keep in mind, because even with the whole thing with Kylie Jenner, as far as what's self-made, that was big on the page. And we have to keep in mind that there are black wealthy people. Right.
Like his grandfather was wealthy. The wealthiest person in West Africa, I believe.
Yeah. So, and there's nothing wrong with, we have to get out of that mind. Like, there's nothing to be embarrassed about if your family has money. Right? That's what we should strive to do, to actually leave a legacy for our kids. And it's like we almost like are embarrassed if we have any leg up. I mean, like it's kind of backwards way of thinking. But so yeah, he comes from a wealthy family, but nowhere near where he is now. So at 21, he starts a concrete business, right? And from there, it's a $5,000 loan that he got from his uncle
Yeah.
to start the business. From there, he parlayed that into pretty much everything in Nigeria.
Pick
Agriculture, food, telecommunications,
banking, petroleum,
sugar, flour, everything. He's
salt, like
guy's got his hands in everything.
Yeah.
Everything in the country is pretty much he's involved with in one way or the other. He's heavy in politics, everything, right? So what he's doing now is that he is taking a major risk, but that's what business is about, right? He's taking a major risk in building a $12 billion petroleum refinery.
Yes.
Right? In Nigeria. So
just a couple things about Nigeria. Nigeria is Africa's largest oil producer. So that's just the first thing. Now they control, I think, the 10th largest oil reserves in the country. Oh, and I'm sorry, in the world.
In the world.
In the world.
So,
but they don't take their not their resources, but they don't have refineries that are efficient enough to get it throughout the entire country.
Yeah, so the thing about Nigeria is that they have the 10th largest oil reserve, like you said, in the world. But they only have 4 state-run refineries, and those are old. So what happens is that they have to import most of their petroleum, which makes no sense, right? Because you have so much petroleum in your backyard, literally, but you have to import it because you don't have the infrastructure to actually produce it yourself. So that's his thing. His thing is like, why do we have to bring in all of this stuff from the Middle East and all these other different countries when we have it right here? So he's building a $12 billion refinery, and what that will do is make it. Well, it's going to be the largest petroleum refinery in the world.
Yeah,
in the world.
He went out, and this is built on wasteland. So again, his business helps with this process, right? Because he has the concrete and he has the trucks and he has all these things that help build it. So he's building it right now. I believe it's off the south coast of Nigeria. But yeah, like, let's build this refinery because there's no point of us importing anymore.
Right. So that's going to take, if all goes well. So right now, his company made $4 billion in revenue last year. If all goes well, that's going to take it from his company from $4 billion to $30 billion.
Yeah. So the key part about that is that 60% of Nigeria, right, they're not connected to the power grid. 60%. And when the people who are, they have like 4 hours of power at a time. So there's like long history of blackouts in the country. So he has a chance to provide electricity now to an entire country.
Yes, he has a chance to change the course of Nigeria forever.
Forever.
And also change the course of Africa as well.
The entire continent.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what he's doing is more than just money, right? He has a chance to really leave a legacy forever when it comes to Africa. And then, of course, money plays a part as well. As I said, it takes his company from $4 billion to $30 billion. So now he's a billionaire now. I think he was like number 100 on the list.
Yeah, he I think his highest rank on the list was like 25. He was up to like 25 billion. A couple of things that happened. Stocks.
What this does now, this puts him in like the top 20 now.
Yeah.
Like now he's in there with Bloomberg and guys like that, right?
Yeah.
So that changed the trajectory of wealth as well. But as I said, more importantly, like you said, 60% of the country doesn't have electricity. They're the 10th largest oil producing country, but they have to import all their oil.
Yeah.
So it makes them self-reliant. They can keep all their resources at home now, and it sets a trend for West Africa and the whole sub-Saharan Africa as a whole, right? Because we all know that Africa is the richest continent as far as minerals and what's in the earth, but unfortunately it's the poorest continent economically. Right? So hopefully this will be a trend that countries can follow and businessmen in the countries can follow, where now the wealth is actually kept in Africa and they're producing for themselves and they're keeping it for themselves, right? Well, so there's two sides to every story, right? So a lot of people aren't big fans of his because they said that, he has a lot of money offshore and some shaky business practices.
Some political
pays
scandal.
off politicians.
Right. So his wealth, right? And when we look at our country and we think of the wealthiest people in the world, and we know that 1% of the population has more money than 99%. So his statistic is even larger because, yes, I think 50% of the country does live in poverty, and you have now a man who's in the top 100 wealthiest people in the world. So the disparity is even greater. So people are looking at that like.
But that's not just his. I mean, look at Carlos Slim in Mexico.
Another person.
Or look at this billionaires in India or even America, right? So that's all over the world.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's some rumors that he's done some things, which I mean most business people have on a certain level, right? But then he also has a charity where he's donated $1.2 billion of his own wealth.
Yeah, I believe him and Bill Gates are doing.
Well, he's doing some stuff with Bill Gates as well.
right.
But then he also built 200 homes for poor people.
Yeah.
So
And he said his favorite. So he for the first 20 years of business. So he started his company, I believe, in 1977. First 20 years of business. Refused to travel.
Yeah.
Did not travel at all.
And that's interesting.
No vacation.
So that's because that goes back to the college dinner thing, right? Where it's okay, you start with money. Obviously, if you start with money, you have a leg up. That's obvious, right? But you still have to work the money to make it more money. So the guy didn't take a vacation for 20 years.
20 years.
It took him. Now he takes vacation now. But for the first 20 years in business, he didn't take a vacation.
His ratio now is for every 2 weeks he works, he takes a vacation. We have to get to that ratio.
Yeah, I mean,
that's an amazing
but
ratio.
It's like how many people take vacations
Just
all the
because,
time? Yeah.
and shouldn't be.
You can't afford it.
Right. You have no money and you're still taking vacations just for the hell of it.
You go to Miami just cause.
It's funny you said Miami because when he said the two favorite places to travel,
Atlanta and Miami.
Atlanta and Miami.
That's pretty random. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
If I'm one of the richest people in the world, I love Miami.
Yeah.
I love Atlanta too. Those would not be my two top travel destinations.
Well, where you coming from though? You're coming from New York.
It doesn't matter where I'm coming from.
Well, somebody who's in Nigeria, they may look at that as like that's a tourist destination. I mean, we do it like pretty regularly. Shout out to Atlanta.
Shout out to Atlanta.
Shout out to Atlanta.
Shout out to
Atlanta.
Shout out to Atlanta. Shout out to Miami too.
Yeah.
It's just a little random for me. That's all. But yes, those are his two favorite. He actually owns a lot of property in Atlanta.
Yeah. He I think he had a residency out there, but now I think he's staying at some like luxurious like resort there now. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't own
So
anymore.
I mean, the guy he's balling out of control. But the thing about it also is that there's flip sides to every coin, right? So some people say he's a bad guy. Some people say he's a good guy. I learned that life is complicated, right? So when I was in Colombia, I went to Colombia a little while ago, and obviously when you think of Colombia, who do you think of?
Pablo Escobar.
Pablo Escobar. He's a legend. So everybody knows Pablo Escobar's story. I don't have to tell the story. Half of the country hates him, despises him, and half of the country loves him, right? So depending on who you talk to, you're going to get a different story.
Yeah.
So if you talk to some of the people that he might be responsible for killing and, ruining lives and all these things, then they would tell you that he's the devil. He's the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
But then I went to a community, I forget what it's called, but it's Pablo Escobar community where he built, I think like 300 homes for poor people, right? And he built the whole community. He built the hospital, he built the homes, restaurants, grocery stores, everything. He literally built the community for poor people. And everybody lived rent-free. Everybody had a home.
Yeah.
They got murals of him on the wall. To this day, they still got murals of him. Like, he's a saint, right? So life is complicated, right?
Yeah.
And depending on who you ask opinion, you're going to get a completely different answer.
Yeah, there was in the part where he's building the refinery, there was some negative press where people had lived near the land and he came in.
He cleared off the
land off.
So that's the.
And didn't provide homes or didn't provide anything.
So they said he cleared off the land to make room, but then he built 200 homes for poor people.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and his thing is like he doesn't even want to be remembered as the wealthiest person of African descent. He'd rather be known as a philanthropist. And that's honorable. Like, he just wants to be the person that has given back. And he has a chance to. Like what we said, if you think about it, like, his country relies on imports. He has a chance to reverse their entire trajectory and be a country that is pretty much making their revenue from exporting their resources. So that's, I mean...
No, it's a good story. And then...
It's amazing.
Also, it's just, we like to highlight business people. And we want to give people... inspiration and hope and just different figures, right? Like we all know who Warren Buffett is. We know who Bill Gates is. So why should we not know who he is, right? Like,
I doubt, and I work in schools. His name is never being brought up at any school.
But there's a bunch of people. We got Robert Smith, who's the richest Black American. He's a billionaire, and a lot of people don't know who he is.
They had Rob Johnson before him, and he wasn't brought up.
But even Rob Johnson, he's still in sports entertainment on a certain level. But Robert Smith is in private equity. So we're going to try to highlight different people from different walks of life, but business in particular, because I think it's important for people to to see these people and to just know about them. You don't have to be a fan of them or not, but at least you should be aware of them.
Yeah, the power of presence and the power of perception. It's like at least I've seen somebody who is doing this. It's powerful. If we've never seen that, then we may aspire to be an athlete or somebody in entertainment. It's like, oh wait, there's somebody doing something else in this avenue. Oh, I can do this too, right? So the power of just seeing yourself in somebody who's successful is you can't measure it.
No, you can't. And once again, shout out to Africa, South Africa, to Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia, Somalia, all of that. Egypt. We're gonna go to Africa very soon. Unfortunately, I have not been to Africa yet. I've been a lot of different places, but I have not been to Africa. So that's on my to-do list. I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited, and we're gonna get out there for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, once again, thank you for rocking with us, and do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube, check our website out, check our merch out, check our Patreon out, and once again, just also send requests too, because what we're going to start doing is featuring maybe like small businesses too that have success stories. Because we talk about big companies, but we're going to talk about small businesses as well. So
that was some of the feedback.
DM us if you have a good small business story, or if you know somebody that has a small business story. If you could just DM us a quick paragraph, nothing too crazy, because we got to read it, and we'll try to feature that as well. Yeah. And then also we got requests for book club. So I'm just going to each episode, I'll say a book that I'm reading. Mm-hmm. So right now, I'm currently reading a book called The Big Short, and it's about the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008. It's a very interesting book. If you're into that, they have a movie about it actually as well. Steve Carell's in it. It's an excellent movie, and it just talks about the financial system and how broken the financial system is, how corrupt the financial system is, and it's dope. Trust me, it's dope. So that's my book tip of the week. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Peace.